there, Mama. I'm Courtney Cecil, proud mom of 2 boys and an organizational culture and behavior change executive.
And I'm a believer in building a movement to help the burned out, overwhelmed working moms reclaim their control and free time so they can confidently remain in the workforce without losing their sanity or themselves. Now, let's get started. Hey, y'all, I'm your host, Courtney Cecil, and welcome to this milestone episode of the Life Management System. So, we just turned 1, but we're also just now hitting our 50th episode. So, for this one, I thought I would do something different. I'm going to be very vulnerable and very transparent in sharing my story. And it feels a little uncomfortable for me, I'm not going to lie, because in default, I'm thinking, why the heck is anybody going to care about what my story is? Y'all care about the content, you care about learning and growing and being able to help yourself. But I also know that sometimes that story is really important because it demonstrates that you're not alone. And then there's the added bonus, of course, that it helps build trust with me because you understand that I've been in your shoes before. And it, of course, helps credentialize what it is that I'm talking about on a daily to day basis, whether that be you just tuning into this podcast or listening to my newsletters, or whether that be us actually formally working together. So let's get started. And to do that, I want to just breeze by the basics of my background before I actually get into the story of my career and what led me to this very place of you sitting here listening to me. So, I grew up in a small town called Tazewell, Virginia. It's in the mountains, very tiny, not a lot of diversity. I was the daughter of a small business owner, swore, ironically, here I am as one myself, that I would never do that because I saw how hard my dad worked. He worked all day, every day, and I'll be darned if I'm not following in his footsteps after all. My mom started out as a nurse and then ultimately just moved into secretarial work for my dad and mostly to concentrate on being a present mom for us. It was very important to her that she was extra present for us, and she gets a gold star there. In fact, ironically, I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I'm going to get there here in a second. So then after graduating, I was valedictorian, by the way. I worked really hard on that. I played a lot of sports. I think I played 6 varsity sports and then also played softball over most of my summers until I got really, really serious in tennis in my later years. But I moved on to Virginia Tech. I was a very proud Hokie my entire life, was destined to always go there. And it worked out because I studied industrial and systems engineering, and that program is consistently a top 10. I think when I graduated, it was probably 8, and we've been as high as 3. So it fluctuates somewhere in the top 10, but a very, very good program nevertheless. And it was inside that program that I met my now husband, Richard. We met in a class called Facilities Layout and Planning. It was not sexy, but it was just kind of apropos to this whole conversation and who I am and what I do, because facilities layout and planning was all about organization. It's how do you design your space so that it works with you? In fact, all of industrial engineering was very much about the building blocks of making things work more efficiently and more effectively. So, fast forward, now you kind of have a little insight into how my brain works and why it was such a great fit for me. Richard and I, upon graduating college, relocated to Washington, D.C. I loved my years there. I had so much fun. I lived across from Old Town Alexandria's metro stop. I was going into the city every day. My actual place of work, I was a government consultant for many, many years. And my clients were all right across from the White House, which I thought was super cool. So I got to see all the motorcades. I got to see the Pope come. I was like right in the middle of the action. But the lifestyle was hard for me. When I thought about the type of lifestyle, more or less, that I wanted to create for my boys, I knew that the commute, the smaller places, the older places were just not going to help deliver the experience that I envisioned for my boys, particularly having grown up on like 60 acres in the middle of nowhere. I wanted a little bit more of that. So we eventually relocated to North Carolina, started at Chapel Hill, where we put my husband through business school, and the ambition of relocating to Charlotte specifically. We chose Charlotte on a map. because chances are he could have gone anywhere with his job, but we just knew that this was the place for us for a lot of reasons. The proximity up and down the East Coast to see other family, the cost of living, the weather, we had local family actually. We had extended family here. So a lot of reasons that Charlotte was a good fit for us. Now we actually live in a suburb of Charlotte called Mountain Island Lake. It is still formally a Charlotte address, but I'm like, I don't know, maybe three houses from the very last Charlotte address because we are at the very, very end of the county and actually outside the town limits for that matter. We're having to worry about our trash cans and streetlights and things like that, like you wouldn't have to do if you're living truly in the center of the city. But we love it here. We have two boys. Their names are Witten and Wyant. Those are very personal names to me. They are family names, and I'm very proud of them. And they're just so fitting for the culture of our family and the boys and just the necessity for me for everything to have meaning and purpose. And then we have a dog named Win. I swear I did not plan on having three W's, but Win is actually named after the mountain that I grew up on. It was formerly called Winds Peak. Even people in Tazewell often don't know that that's the formal name of the mountain. It is called Winds Peak. People in Tazewell know it as the Peak. But Win is our first golden retriever. But I grew up with golden retrievers, and they just always would climb mountains and roam it. They were always outside dogs, so they really did treat the mountain as theirs. So it's just fitting that in addition to having my two W's, Witten and Wyant, I then welcome a dog with another W. And then beyond that, I have spent my career, I started in manufacturing actually. Most people don't know that. Spent a couple years in manufacturing, learned very quickly for a lot of reasons. I loved it and it was not for me for my future and what I wanted to create. So I then moved on to consulting. I spent 16 years in professional services and the last couple in banking, and I'm going to share a little bit about that. But ultimately, most of my years were spent in the transformation space. It started out as business process reengineering, but it didn't actually, it wasn't process reengineering that I was mostly after. It was mostly people. It was people transformation. So that launched the majority, like last 2/3 of my career around culture and change transformation. So I have served in a lot of roles, most recently, probably the past decade, at the executive level in that space, and I love it. I will always have a passion around culture transformation and employee experience and engagement at companies. And maybe one of these days I will go back. It could be tomorrow, it could be next month, it could be a year from now, or it could be never. I don't know. I'm going to let the wind blow me there. But in order to get to the punchline, I'm going to have to start at the beginning of my career journey. And that actually starts with me wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. In my mind, I actually remember telling Richard, I got promoted very quickly to manager at my company, faster than anybody else that was at my level at the time. And I looked at him, I was so proud of like the competitiveness of that. But I looked at Richard and was like, I don't need to go beyond this. Like, I'm going to be happy at manager forever. And that was just the absolute biggest crock of crap because there is nothing about me that is ever going to just sit and be okay with not growing. But I knew that I didn't want the pressure of growing a career if it took away from the family life that I wanted to create. But ironically, even before then, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. It is exactly what magnetized Richard and me to one another. I had not never considered dating him, didn't consider him attractive, which is funny now because I think he's the sexiest man alive. Yes, Richard, if you're hearing this, that is so true. But at the time, like we both grew up with stay-at-home moms and we're like, we are who we are because we had that experience and we want to give it for our future families. And that is what ultimately magnetized us together. So it's funny when you fast forward so many years that here I am running a business that is truly intended to make being and sustaining a working mom being possible in working moms movement. So it's just ironic how the world works, right? But part of why I ended up deciding that continuing to work was right for me is because I was so grounded on my values. I worked right to left, is what I call it. I learned that from one of my old bosses. She was our chief people officer, and she'd always say that, like, you need to work right to left. So I worked right to left. And when I thought, and what I mean by that, by the way, is when I think about the with the end in mind and what type of life I wanted to create for myself, for my marriage, for my kids, what was really important to me is being able to travel with my boys, to be able to show them parts of the world that they otherwise didn't get. And part of that's because of where I grew up and the lack of experience and diversity you have in that more sheltered environment. But also part of it's because I was quite frankly scared shitless that my boys are going to grow up and not want to be close with me. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm convinced that travel can be a hobby that we will grow with as a family and will give us something that unites us for the rest of our lives. So that was part of it. The other part of it is because I wanted a really nice house. And I say that with the caveat that I actually really tend to not prioritize material items. I don't have nice clothes. I mean, they're nice enough, don't get me wrong. I definitely don't have nice shoes because you wear those suckers out. I just never really understood the shoe craze. I drive a car, by the way, that is a 2013, so it's 12 years old. It has 170,000 miles. I just tend to not need and desire material items. But what I do really, really care a lot about is having a nice house. Part of that is a pride point. Part of it is for my own sanity. I want to be able to relax in my own house and be able to feel like I can get comfortable here. I also love to host, and that's really important to me. I want it to be somewhere that people feel good about coming to as opposed to dreading. But the single biggest reason I've always wanted a nice house is because I want to recreate the experience that my parents did for me. We had a very fantastic, very unique house that I grew up in. My dad designed it, my grandfather built it. It was on a lot of land. It had beautiful views, and it was just the coolest place to hang out. And we entertained a lot, particularly our friend groups. We had lots of sleepovers there. We had in high school, we had it was a revolving door of friends that were coming over. And a lot of that's because we had a lot of fun stuff to do. And it was because really it was a neat house. And I want that too. My parents were very transparent. They said, part of the reason that we always want this for you is because we kind of want to keep our eye on you and to know that you have a place that you can hang out with your friends that is not going to put pressure on you to do something that you don't want to do. And that's kind of the experience I want for the boys too. I want them to be able to want to host their friends, but most importantly, I want to create a space where as they grow up and grow out of our house, that they want to come back, whether that be bringing their family, bringing their friends while they're in college. So having a nice house was important to me. So if you like take the travel and you take the nice house and you smush them together, okay, that cost a lot of money. And that tells me I needed to stay in the workforce. So after I had Witten, my oldest, I went back to work. We got 12 weeks, went back. It was a very, very hard transition. Cried a lot. And then after probably like 2 weeks, I realized now I understand what people mean when they say I'm better because I work. Because I had patience at the end of the day to hold that whining baby and know that I still appreciated that time, even though it was hard. It was hard holding a child that is just crying and crying and crying, but I had the patience to do it because I was away all day. I appreciated that time. Then very quickly got pregnant. My boys are 18 months and 1 day apart. So very quickly got pregnant. And the second pregnancy, it's amazing how fast it flies by. But it was a little bit of a rocky start for a number of different reasons when it's time to welcome Wyatt into the world. The first was that Witten was in physical therapy. He was very delayed with walking and actually even going from setting up to or laying down to setting up. We just had a lot of work to do with him. So for 6 months, it was all hands on deck between us and his nanny and his physical therapist trying to get him there. And then towards the end of that, my nanny quit with no warning. I knew that she wasn't going to come back eventually. We'd already talked about that. I certainly was not anticipating it when it happened. We were in the middle of a custom build, very first world problem, but also incredibly hands on. And then my boss also resigned when I was out on maternity leave. So that kind of brought me back pretty aggressively into the work fold, certainly earlier than I anticipated. Came back because my boss was gone and my function, I was leading culture at the time, was not going anywhere. I decided to go back into consulting to help stand up some culture service offerings. And that was aggressive. At that time, I'm like, okay, this is the time for me to make partner. It was very, very, very consuming. I had certainly what I would classify as an abusive boss. I probably was experiencing some postpartum depression, but that was probably all amplified by the fact that my stress was chronic and out of control. But that also led to sleep anxiety. I was probably sleeping 2 to 3 good hours, if at all, even if I don't even know if I could classify them as good, 2 to 3 hours a night. And that caused some sleep anxiety. So my sleep could never get fixed because I was so stressed, but my stress couldn't get fixed because I wasn't getting sleep. It was just this vicious cycle. And if that's you, if you deal with that, I actually have a podcast episode that I will link in the show notes. But I was just kind of a mess. And then I got to this tipping point in that time of life where I realized I had this disruptor, like something needs to change. And that disruptor was actually just a really shitty week at work. My youngest, Wyatt, was about 7 months at the time, and he had RSV. And I was working on a proposal among many, 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 many other things. And because of the intensity, I was another 80-hour week, which I often put in. Because I was working so much, I did not have enough time at all to sit there and hold my very vulnerable 7-month-old who was struggling with RSV. My husband and my au pair at the time were using the nebulizer on him, and it just broke my heart that I couldn't be there with them because of work. And it was a sacrifice I was actually okay making. But the difference between making it for something you love and making it for something that you don't or something you're underappreciated in was completely different. And I was severely underappreciated by this abusive boss. And it was made worse when my teammates actually started dumping on me too. So we ended up a week before that proposal was due. Again, I was in consulting. My teammates that had responsibilities ended up saying, sorry, we're busy. We kind of need you to do a lot of this. And meanwhile, I didn't understand the industry we were pitching. I didn't understand the skills we were pitching. I was way over my head. And I didn't have the luxury of AI to be able to help me think through it then either. So it was just I was in over my head. But so they dumped all the responsibilities on me. But then at the end, when we ended up not winning it, and my boss came back and was like, "What the heck happened?" They scarecrowed armed and like pointed at me. And they're like, "Homegirl over here dropped the ball," instead of owning their own accountability and why it didn't work. But my boss came down on me really hard. He's like, "What the heck happened?" And I told him, I was like, listen, I gave it everything I could. I literally didn't have another minute I could have given this week. I put in 80 hours and I was toasted. And he was like, I want to see the list of the things you did. So I sent him the list of everything that I did that week because he didn't believe that I could have possibly worked that much and not done better on this proposal. So I sent him the list. Then my boss said, there, that half hour. I can't believe you wasted a half hour of time on HR bullshit. So I responded. I was like, okay, well, then consider that my free time. I'm sorry. I spent 79 and a half hours working last week. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. It wasn't, oh, I'm sorry, you couldn't spend time with your kids, or wow, we probably need to recalibrate some of your responsibilities. Like, that's his response. That's exactly why I knew at that point I needed to go. Like, something needed to change. And it was a mix between what I did at work that needed to change and also how I did my home life. So I got back to my industrial and systems engineering roots and my culture roots. So to reground, if you're unfamiliar, industrial and systems engineering at its core is how do you make things work better, smarter? How do you maximize what it is that your output is? It's all about efficiency and effectiveness, a lot of organization. And then culture. I had spent at this point, I guess the past 5 years in culture transformation. And culture transformation is all about values alignment. So, how do I align my values with everything that I'm doing in life to make sure the things that I'm spending my time on are things that I actually value? And some of that was just me acknowledging reality on what some of my like quote unquote handicaps were at the time and my ability to be more efficient or effective. So as an example, I had no family that was local that could help us. So I needed to build my village. I needed to think about our au pairs and our neighbors and my husband and the boys and the way that I leveraged help completely different than I ever did before. I also needed to put systems in place that enabled our day to day to run a lot smoother than it had been. We were just, I wouldn't say we were winging it. There was nothing about my personality that ever led us to winging it, but it's different than being smarter and more calculated in a way that is repeatable, in a way that actually builds a routine that allows everybody else in my life to fit into it and to run that routine equally as smoothly. But most importantly, I knew I needed to prioritize myself. I hadn't worked out in years. I didn't recognize my body when I looked in the mirror. I knew that my stress levels wouldn't change unless my sleep habits changed. So I had to get down to basics and prioritizing myself. So I also, at that point, given everything I'd been through, knew that I needed to change my job. What I was doing was not serving me. In fact, it was making it me, the worst version of myself, not just for me, but for my family. So I know something needed to change. And if anybody here is in a similar position, another episode that I will link is episode 19 on career pathing decisions. And what I mean by that is there are certain things that are worth considering if you are making a career change to make sure the things you're prioritizing actually align with the type of life you're trying to create. So if you're making a career decision around like, what do I do? How do I do it differently? I know this isn't working. It's probably worth listening to that episode just to see if it gives you any insights on the things that you should be prioritizing looking for. Okay, so I ultimately decided at that point that it was time for me to go get out of consulting, just say goodbye to the partner path because I couldn't make it work at the firm I was in. And I cared more about staying at that firm and helping it than I did going somewhere else just to make partner. So I went back into administration. I'd worked in the office of the CEO before I went into consulting and went back there. And I had a really, really, really fun 3 years. I worked for my original CEO that I supported from the very beginning. I worked for another CEO and was actually and served as chief of staff for him. Most of my roles were around organizational strategy and like broader alignment of the organization in ways that would allow us to get more out of our strategy and like more fulfillment and activation of that. It was so much fun. I really, really, really liked it. Actually, I was just with my colleague who ended up backfilling me in that role and asked her how things are going. And she's like, ah. And I was like, do you love it? And she looked at me and she goes, do you ever really love work? I was like, yes. There were probably 5 years that I loved what I did, like really loved what I did. Two of them were before the boys came along, and three of them were those 3 years. But then that fourth year came along. My boss retired. So I knew that I needed to move on to something else. And we collectively decided what that looked like. And I moved into this new role and a new function that the incoming CEO set up. And it was not a fit. Well, no, for a lot of different reasons that are immaterial here. But I cried a lot. And one of my closest mentors, she was the chief comms officer. She kept reminding me, like, Courtney, this is not healthy. This is not the way it should be for you. You need to go. And she said it out of love, and she was right. So I did start looking fairly early into that transition because I knew I needed to go too. I had spent 16 years at this firm and needed to try something different before I got stuck there. I also had a lot of reflection to do around some of the gaps that I had in my experience. Well, even though I started looking, turns out they were taking things into their own hands, and I ultimately ended up being let go. 8 months after standing up this function, our new CEO decided that's not the path he wanted to take and decided to collapse the function. And the three of us that were most senior were, our positions were eliminated, and I was moved out. And y'all, it destroyed me. I remember sitting on the dock at my parents' house. They have a condo in the lake here, and I was sitting out on the dock with their friends and another couple who the gentleman was an office managing partner at a major firm here in Charlotte. And they were talking about me being, when you get let go. I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way I'll get let go from this place because first of all, there was a huge comp gap. I was massively undervalued and paid a lot cheaper than anybody else that was at my level, anybody else that was producing what I was. And I was like, why? That would be dumb. Why would they ever let me go? Because I'm such cheap labor that is pound for pound driving a whole lot of value for what it is they're paying me. I have great relationships. I had a great brand, but nope, didn't matter. Like, did not matter. It was a very humbling experience. I was butthurt. That's an understatement. I mean, it was just, it broke my heart. When I was coming out of college, I spent significant time finding the right match for me. I interviewed with 22 different places. I'm proud to say I didn't get turned down from a single one, but I found the one I wanted. So some of those I actually had offers on the table. Some of those I politely declined to continue. And some of those I was actively interviewing in when this offer to my firm came in. But I knew that that was the firm for me and it felt like home and it felt right. And it was for 16 years. So leaving, particularly under those conditions, was traumatic is an extreme word, and yet it almost feels appropriate because so much of my identity was tied up in that company. So much of my time and my happiness and my network, my friends, they were all tied up in that company. It was hard. It was very disruptive for me. But that's also the point that allowed me the mental freedom to dream what it is that I ultimately wanted to do. So I knew I wasn't done with corporate. After I left the office of the CEO to go into this other function, part of the reason I wanted to do that is because I am very visionary, I'm very strategic, and I wanted the ability to exercise those skills and being able to help build something out. So I knew that I was committed to finding something else. And I did that. I went and found a role leading culture and engagement at a Fortune 50. And I got that big title, the big pay, whatever it may be, that I always really wanted to be able to get a place of employment before. But um, where my heart was, I learned very quickly through this, I don't know, transformation process that my heart was in helping women. So I had a lot of conversations where people would say, what is it that people come to you for? Like when you think about why people come to you, what is that? And on repeat, it was, hey, moms come to me, new moms come to me, and they say, how the heck do you do as much as you do? I see you having this demanding career. You always look put together. Your house is perfect. You're always traveling. You show up for all your friends. You have great relationships. You have a healthy marriage. Like, how the heck do you do it? And it was that insight in those conversations that led me to a place where I'm like, you know what? There might be merit there. So between when I left my last job and when I started my new corporate job, I actually opened my consultancy for the first time, Courtney Cecil Coaching. And that is also the time when I started building the brand Working Moms Movement. And for a couple years, I worked a lot of nights and weekends on building this brand. I was tired all the time, which is ironic because I know I teach all of my clients to turn things off, but I was just so committed to the side hustle and making it work because I cared so deeply about being able to help others. So I moonlighted a lot of late nights, a lot of full weekends, recording podcast episodes like this, being interviewed on others, being able to develop content, being able to develop a course that I now offer to other people. But I just felt very, very called to this work. And I've had to embrace a B minus stage of life. So if you have followed me for a while, you've probably heard me say that. Again, I was valedictorian, but this is not the stage in life where I can be A plus plus. I have to be B minus. So I sometimes get a little embarrassed when somebody finds my Instagram handle or when somebody finds my website because it is just not good work, y'all. It is not like my best work. But you know what it is? It's good enough. It is getting things out there so I can focus more on helping my clients and helping build this brand so I can help then even more people. Like the sexy website will come, a better Instagram account will come. All of that will happen though when I can afford to hire help to help me do that. Otherwise, right now, I need to be really clear on what my highest and best use is in the interest of growing this business, which is all about helping clients and fueling that growth. So I just recently left the corporate role that I was in, and I'm feeling very liberated about that. Also, a little bit vulnerable and a little bit anxious. But I believe my highest and best use now is to help as many moms as possible, like to pour gasoline on this business and just like see it explode. And I can only do that if I can go all in. Turns out going all in doesn't mean that I have any more free time because I'm having to spend all of the time I used to spend on my day job. I'm having to spend that in selling and like drumming up conversations in DMs to really get to know my audience and be able to better serve them. Um, and one of these days, like I'll be able to elevate my standards and be able to bring in other people and to be able to to scratch that quality itch that's not being scratched right now. But I am just leaning fully in to the idea of being able to serve you all. And I am just so grateful for the encouragement along the way and all of your engagement that has truly fueled me at night. I mean, I'm telling you what, it has been many, many years at this point now that I have not gotten to watch a TV show for me, or that I've really gotten to just sit there and relax while even watching a family movie with the boys. But it's all in the interest of doing something that I care a lot about. And what I don't care about is just sitting there watching TV. So I do have to remind myself that my values are aligned around helping other people be at their best. I believe that is my purpose in this life. Anybody that has spent serious time with me knows that I go really deep. I'm all about getting to know the real person and helping them just uncover things about themselves that they didn't realize. So, this business is just such an outlet for me to be able to do that in the interest of helping people be at their best, to be able to help them understand what it is that they're here to do and be able to enjoy their journey along the way. So now that I am fully in this business, here's where I'm spending my time. First of all, of course, I host this podcast, The Life Management System, but I also have a group coaching program that continues to fill out day by day by day. And it's really exciting to all the new moms that I've been able to welcome in the past 2 months since I've been fully focusing on this. So I am loving that. That group coaching program is also serendipitously called the Life Management System because it's exactly what I am helping them build for themselves. I also do now one-on-one coaching with executive women or those that are trying to get into the executive ranks and perhaps know that in order to get there and it be sustainable, they have to do things differently. So I also offer one-on-one coaching in those circumstances. And then I do a lot of stuff with corporate. So if you have an organization that you believe is very invested in helping the growth of caregivers, working parents, women in particular, I would love the opportunity to engage. So I do speaking, I host workshops there, and I also have development programs that where you all are going through things together with your peers and talking about some of your needs. And I'm really excited about all of that because I know that's what's going to allow me to make an even bigger impact at scale. So if you know people that are involved in ERGs, so think women's caregivers, mental health. If you know or are in it yourself, DE&I, performance, talent management, learning, benefits. Those are the type of leaders that I need to connect with in order to be able to take the work-life principles that I teach here into the organization. So the last thing that I am spending my time doing, if this is at all of interest to you or anybody that you might know, is helping advise and consult on talent engagement and retention. Again, I spent the past 13 years in culture and engagement. So I have a very unique perspective there. I have a lot to offer and would be delighted to be able to talk to anybody that you might think could benefit from that. Okay. So thank you for indulging in my story. I know this is a long episode. It is much longer than I like to deliver, but again, I'm hoping that you heard something there that sounds familiar, that you're like, oh gosh, I remember what it was like to bring in that second kid and like hit rock bottom. Or I remember what it was like to have the abusive boss and know that something needed to change. So hopefully, if anything, you got that you're not alone. Maybe you also are taking away that you feel a little bit more connected to me, or that you feel a little bit more clear on what my credentials are. The industrial and systems engineering background, the culture transformation work that I've done, which is all about value alignment. And goodness, I didn't even talk about some of the other work around like change management. I'm change management certified and ProSci, which is about getting things to stick. Or I am a project management professional, a PMP, which is all about just the way that you manage all the stuff. Or I am a Six Sigma black belt and that's all about like quality control and efficiency and effectiveness. So there's a lot in my resume that I promise is relevant, but most especially I'm a mom. So a lot of people will invest in a life coach or they'll invest in a career coach, but what most of us prioritize is being a mom. And my whole shtick is allowing you to concentrate the most on what lights you up and what's important to you, both yourself, your marriage, your sanity, and being a mom. So it is in the spirit of that I am coming to you and believe I have something to offer. So if you are curious about the life management system and what it really means at its core, I'm going to distill this down for you. So the first episode ever was actually on what the heck is a life management system? I'm hoping this can replace that episode. In our very early days, we were learning, and there's a lot of background noise and music that now we can't strip away. We're kind of stuck with it, and I think it's a little distracting and overwhelming. So I am layering it in here. And that way, if you are interested, you get to learn a little bit about why I call it a life management system. That is my terminology. It is not something you will otherwise see on the market, but I think it makes sense because a life management system is all about you. It is customized to you and what you specifically value. Why? If you've been here, you know the answer to that. Because what you value informs what you prioritize, and what you prioritize informs how you spend your resources. Your resources being time, money, and energy. And yes, you can replenish your energy. Yes, you can get more money. What you cannot get more of, though, is time. That is ultimately what we are solving for here in the life management system, is not just to have a more aligned life, but how to spend your time on what you truly prioritize because it aligns with what you value. So the life management system and the way that I've set it up behind, like inside my program, is about helping you get sustainable alignment around those core values. And I hope and believe that some of the things that you hear inside that program will truly change your life. Like you'll never do things the same again when you have those insights. But inside this episode or inside this podcast, it is intended to mirror some of what we talk about inside the program. So that way you're getting snack sized insights that might bring you help in a more consumable free way. So inside the life management system, we talk about many things, but some of the core fundamental lessons are on things like why you work, how you manage your mom guilt, really getting clarity on your values and your priorities. So that way we have a compass for you that we create everything else around. We also talk about streamlining your responsibilities and how to leverage others. We talk about aligning your parenting style with what you value because it's going to be different for all of us and what we need to prioritize. We talk about creating order in your home and your weekly routine and how you manage your time. And part of that time are things like boundaries, not just knowing what to set. And y'all, there are tons of boundaries. It's not just time boundaries, it is financial boundaries, it is relationship boundaries, it is social and physical boundaries. But when you know what boundaries you need to put in place, it makes it a lot easier for you to honor them because you know what those boundaries are serving and what values they are protecting. We also talk about building an ironclad routine that is repeatable, that your whole family can fit into. So that way, the mental load and the invisible labor of keeping everybody moving doesn't fall on you. And most especially, we learn how to create time for you because that's what so many of my clients are suffering from. Most of them are losing themselves because they're like, I don't remember the last time I worked out or was able to sit down and read a book or do something that I love. I want that for you. I want you to be able to do that. Like right now, what I've been doing is creating this business. Like that's my time. And I know that, but it's because I'm so passionate about this that I am very willing to do it. But if it wasn't for this, you better believe. And even on top of this, like y'all, I work out every day. I take walks. I still have plenty of social hours with my friends. I don't stop traveling. I am always on the go. And I just want y'all to be able to do the same things because it is very possible. I promise you, if I was managing 80-hour work weeks with two different jobs, commutes, evening activities for my boys. I never stopped traveling. I never stopped seeing my friends, recording a podcast, writing a newsletter. Like I have all the stuff I've been able to do, but it's all because I have my own life management system in place. Those are the kind of things that I teach you inside the program. And then, of course, I talk about here too. And the last thing that I offer in the program that I think is really important is fellowship with others. I lead a group coaching program for a reason. Yes, I will do one-on-one. Those, of course, come higher ticket because they're one-on-one. But I think that there's something to be said for going through the journey with other people, having a safe space to talk about some of what you're experiencing and just seeing that you're not alone. So I really believe in the group coaching model. I think it is effective. We are able to give everybody time every week to be able to keep your own goals moving. But just like to me, the fellowship and the sisterhood really means a lot. So all of the play-by-play on those kind of things, those kind of topics, you get inside the program. But again, this podcast is really intended to unpack some of those concepts in a snack-sized piece at a time to be able to make free content available to everyone. So that way you have enough insights and tools and knowledge that you can put to play yourself. So I know that many of the women in my program appreciate the accountability, and that's what actually gets them results. But hopefully you are disciplined enough that you are able to do that for yourself as well. So anyway, I'm going to tie this up with a bow. Thank you so much for indulging and letting me tell my story. I hope the concepts that I'm bringing to life inside the Life Management System podcast are helpful. And of course, I'm always open to feedback. What do you love? What do you want more of? What are you curious about? What's not working? Like all of it. You can email me personally and you can get my email at Courtney@workingmomsmovement.com. But until next time, friends, it's a happy 50th milestone episode to all of us that are tuning in. If nobody's told you lately, you're doing a great job. You've got this, mama. Hey friend, thanks for tuning in. Add the Life Management System podcast to your favorites so you don't miss my practical, snack-sized tips to help you manage the mental load and create a life that works for you. If we're not yet connected on Instagram, come say hi at Working Moms Movement for daily inspiration. And if this is your third or 10th time listening, it's time you bless the small business. Share this episode with another working mom in the thick of it and take 30 seconds to rate and review. It helps more than you know. And if you're ready to go from surviving to thriving and make your day-to-day actually sustainable, email me at Courtney@workingmomsmovement.com. Mention this podcast for 25% off my coaching services. I also speak and host workshops for organizations that want to support working parents from the inside out. Reach out if you think yours is ready. This has been the Life Management System, your shortcut to less chaos and more calm. And here's your reminder to keep managing your life instead of letting it manage you.